All right, today we are diving into something huge, something that's basically the ultimate rulebook for every single country out there: constitutional law.
I mean, think about it for a second. How do you actually run a country? How do you get millions of people, all with their own ideas and interests, to live together, hopefully peacefully, while making sure their rights are protected? Well, it all starts with a core set of rules.
Yeah, you can really think of it like the rulebook for the most complicated game you can imagine. It lays out who the players are, what they can and can't do, what their powers are, and what their limits are. And this isn't just some ordinary rulebook, oh no. This is the one that every other law in the country has to follow. Okay, so let's get a little more specific here. What exactly is a constitution? You'll often hear it called the supreme law or the fundamental law of the land. And just look at the scope of this definition. A constitution isn't just a single piece of paper, it's the entire system of government. It defines the main players, right? You've got the legislature, the folks who make the laws, the executive who carries them out, and the judiciary who interprets what they all mean. And here's the absolute key: every single other law has to trace its power, its validity, right back to this one source.
But, and this is a big but, not all these rulebooks look the same. It's kind of like there are two different ways to do it. On one hand, you've got countries like the USA, where they put pretty much everything into one single formal document. And on the other hand, you have places like the UK, where the Constitution is more like a collection of rules pulled from all over the place, some of which aren't even officially written down.
So that brings us to our first big divide: the whole idea of a written versus an unwritten constitution. Let's take a closer look at these two different blueprints. So first up, we've got the written constitution. The classic example everyone points to is, of course, the US Constitution. It's one single foundational text that the entire system of government gets its authority from. Most countries actually have one of these, and they're often created at a really big moment in their history, like right after gaining independence. But then you've got the total opposite, the UK's unwritten constitution. Now, that name is a little misleading. It's not that nothing is written down. It's just that the rules are kind of scattered all over the place. You've got laws from Parliament, you've got decisions from judges, and you even have these unwritten rules called conventions. For example, there's no actual law that says the king has to sign a bill passed by Parliament, but it's a convention, a rule that is just never, ever broken. All right, let's move on to our next big question, and this one's super practical. Once you've got all these rules in place, how easy is it to actually change them? This is where we get into the difference between flexible and rigid constitutions.
Okay, so a rigid constitution has this built-in safety lock, you could say. You can't just change the most important fundamental laws with a simple majority vote like you would for a regular everyday law. And the whole idea behind this is to protect the core principles of the country from being changed just because of a temporary political mood. It's all about stability.
So what does that special procedure actually look like? Well, it could mean you need a supermajority in the legislature, something like a two-thirds vote, which is way harder to get. Or in places like Switzerland, they take it a step further. The change has to be approved directly by the people in a national vote, a referendum. The bottom line is, they are intentionally making these core rules really, really hard to change. And that brings us to our last major classification, which is all about the architecture of power. Who holds the power? Where does the ultimate authority actually live? Is it all in one central place, or is it spread out? This is the classic federal versus unitary debate. So let's break that down. In a unitary system, all the power flows from one single central government. Sure, there might be local governments, but they only have whatever power the central government decides to give them. But in a federal system, it's totally different. Power is constitutionally split between a central government and regional governments, like states or provinces. And this is the critical part. Neither one is the boss of the other. They are partners sharing the job of governing.
And we can see this play out in the real world. A country like Sri Lanka is a unitary state, meaning power is concentrated at the center. But then you look at the federal side, and you've got big players like the USA, Switzerland, Canada, and Australia. Their constitutions specifically draw lines, dividing power between the national government and their states or regions.
Okay, so we've seen how these rulebooks can be structured, but that brings up another question. Where do all these rules actually come from? It's not always as simple as just one document written hundreds of years ago. Of course, the Constitution document itself is source number one, but other things are absolutely vital too. You have the laws passed by Parliament or Congress, those are called statutes, and they fill in a lot of the details. And maybe just as important, you have decisions made by judges, what we call case law, which interpret what the Constitution actually means in the real world. Those decisions can shape the country for generations.
And this all leads to a really important takeaway. A constitution isn't some static, dusty old document sitting in a museum. It's a living, breathing system. It grows and changes over time through new laws, through amendments, and through how judges interpret it. It's constantly being shaped by the very country it's supposed to govern. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Every single one of us lives in a country that plays by a set of these fundamental rules. This rulebook, it defines your rights, it defines the power of your leaders, and it defines the very character of your nation. So the question I have for you is, do you know what's in your country's rulebook?